A new study shows that coronavirus came from a wet market. What do you mean you want to know who funded that study? Mind your own business! Hey there, you 5.1 million awakening wonders. We know, of course, don't we, that we're supposed only now to focus on the horrific suffering of the people of Ukraine. We think of them, we send our love, our presence, and anything we can offer them to them. But guess what? There's still stuff being revealed around the coronavirus pandemic, which dominated everyone's lives for the last couple of years, ushered in all sorts of new legislation, and there are still many questions that go unanswered. The lab leak theory has risen to prominence over recent weeks, but a paper that was, guess what, published everywhere in the mainstream media suggested that it did, after all, come from a wet market. Let's have a look at that study. Let's have a look at the sources that used it. And then finally, we'll look at who paid for that wet market study. I don't want to spoil it, but you'll be interested to see who paid for it. Okay, but before we get into that, if you want to come and see me live, I'm on tour in the UK right now. You can come and see me in Carlisle, Plymouth, Bristol, Glasgow, Blackpool. There's a link in the description. You'll get a lot off your chest. You'll feel connected, revivified. It's fun. It's beautiful. If you can come, come. Now let's get into what's going on at Wuhan. Scientists released a pair of studies on Saturday that once again reprised the assertion that the COVID-19 pandemic began in a Wuhan market, not a lab. Oh, no, then. The New York Times. We're going to start not trusting the New York Times now. The New York Times story was repeated across multiple mainstream media outlets, including CNN. What, you don't trust CNN now? They've got people working in a room out back, experts. NPR, yeah? The New York Post, Newsweek, the Daily Mail, the Independent, and Guardian. Things that are better than you. The basis of the hypothesis is that the coronavirus was very likely present in live mammals that the Huanan seafood wholesale market sold in late 2019. In essence, researchers say that the samples they took from the Huanan market tested positive for two evolutionary branches of the virus, known as lineages A and B. Both lineages circulated in the earlier casts of COVID-19 in China. China. The report supposedly debunks earlier findings that linked only lineage B to this specific Huanan market. Here is why the difference is important. Lineage B evolved after lineage A. Therefore, if the market was only connected to lineage B, it would suggest that the virus arrived at the market after spreading around Wuhan. There are two identifiable strands. One of the strands is identifiably earlier in the evolutionary chain. Even I, an idiot, can understand that. The finding instead proposes the idea that on two separate occasions, people working or shopping at the market became infected with the virus. Just because they found traces of it in that Wuhan wet market, that doesn't mean it originated from that Wuhan wet market. I mean, how big is Wuhan? I'm assuming that it's not unfeasible that someone could go from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where they do research on bat coronaviruses, pop out for a little bit of lunch, go to the Wuhan wet market, and in so doing, transfer those viruses. I'm not saying that is what happened, obviously. It's pretty clear I'm not a scientist. Look at the cardigan. But I'm saying it's possible. Look, we don't know. I don't know if it came from a wet market or the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where they do studies on gain of function on bat viruses. I don't know which of those ones it comes from. I don't know. But I do know that one of those stories was really pushed and promoted, and the other one was verboten, forbidden, prevented from being spoken about. And now when this little thing's come out, they can't wait to put it in every single newspaper in the world. Obedient little prefects. Yes, sir, let's get it in the paper, hot off the press. It came from the wet market. It came from the wet market. Look at some other information around these studies. First of all, the studies have not been peer reviewed. Hello, it's your peers here. Can we review that? No. And according to the New York Times, have not yet been published in a scientific journal. Secondly, researchers could also not identify which animal at the market spread the virus to humans. My understanding is that that's a crucial moment in the progress of this pandemic, has been the transference between species. Next, the studies include notable gaps in logic. If the lab theory is wrong, then that means a novel bat coronavirus just so happened to originate about 400 yards from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which studies bat coronaviruses. Oh, they can definitely go to the wet market for lunch. If so, that's quite an unfortunate coincidence. And the last place you'd want to pop for your lunch break. Moreover, 3 researchers who worked at the WIV fell ill with COVID-like symptoms in late 2019. Bloody hell. It's a lot of coincidences we're being asked to accept, isn't it? Oh, I've got coronavirus-like symptoms. I feel awful. What have you been working on today? Coronavirus-like viruses. Well, we better stay away from that wet market. It's lethal over there. Coronavirus-like symptoms as they help conduct gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research at the centre of the lab leak theory involves supercharging viruses to increase their lethality. Leaked emails now show that Dr. Fauci and other scientists discussed this specific research and COVID's unusual features in early 2020, and although this evidence is circumstantial, 2 doctors argued last year in the Wall Street Journal that the science points to a lab origin as well. Scientists found a CGG-CGG combination in COVID-2, but have never found that combination naturally in other SARS-related diseases. This suggests COVID's origin was man-made. Okay, so there's signature molecules that appear to imply that it did not occur naturally. Proponents of a zoonotic origin must explain why the novel coronavirus, when it mutated or recombined, happened to pick its least favourite combination, the double CGG. Why did it replicate the choice the lab's gain-of-function researchers would have made? Dr. Stephen Key, founder of the Atossa Therapeutics, argued in the WSJ. Okay, so it just so happens that this form of the coronavirus, which may yet still have originated in the wet market, replicated the preferred sequencing that is usually undertaken in laboratories. A further coincidence, the people down the lab are ill. It's called the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's a sequencing that suggests that it's been interfered with or manufactured by humans. If they're at the old Wuhan lab, didn't do it, they're some of the unluckiest scientists in the world. I've cut their funding just on the basis that they got no luck. They're not going to come up with it. We've come up with a cure for cancer. Ow! My eye! Alina Chan, molecular biologist at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, and author of The Search for the Origin of COVID-19, tweeted, "The coverage of the newest reprints by the Proximal Origin authors and friends must be breaking some kind of record. Has anyone else heard of preprints being featured on the New York Times front page news? Not to mention at the same time as a war is starting." What that is an agenda, isn't it? Clearly. A bit of information that supports the preferred thesis comes out, even at a very early stage, not yet peer-reviewed or picked up by a scientific journal, being pushed out as if it's a fact. What that does is it muddies the water. It makes you uncertain. Oh, I heard that it sort of came from a lab. Yeah, no, there's another study that says it comes from the market again. So you can't with any confidence assert what's true. What it does show is there is a preferred perception that the mainstream media and various other agencies and authorities are working towards. You can say that with some certainty because when there was theories about, hey, did it come from the lab, New York Times weren't plastering that all over the front page. You weren't even allowed to say it on social media. That is an agenda. That's what that looks like. So, of course, I'm not saying it came from the market or it came from the lab. How could I possibly know? I'm just some bloke. But what I can tell you with clarity and certainty is there seems to be a pattern where some information is picked up and promoted and other information is banned. What does that tell you? Also, Alina Chan tweeted, "I also think the New York Times, Carl Zimmer, Ben J. Mueller, that your reporting should raise the possible conflicts of interest among the authorship." Oh, hang on. The study was conceived by Christian Andersen, and I usually like his fairy tales, of Proximal Origin February 1st call fame, and the project was funded in whole or in part by NIAID, the director of whom is Dr. Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci. I've heard of him somewhere. In August, The Spectator uncovered that a top editor at the New York Times instructed staffers not to investigate the origins of COVID-19, that they were only to push a zoonotic origin. That's the New York Times. That's a piece of legacy media where the very minimum you expect is they analyse and investigate all possible outcomes, particularly with something as unprecedented and as important as this. It's becoming clear that what happened is they went, oh, look, we don't want people talking about various complex, nuanced issues. Let's just push this route, and anything that gets in the way of this agenda, just push it to the margins. That is... Maybe, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but what it ain't is democracy. What it ain't is a free press. Last week, we covered a story about how the NIH sent The Intercept 292 fully redacted pages rather than substantive material that could help us understand how the virus first came to infect humans. The NIH, who redacted those documents, house the NIAID. So this study was funded by a subset of the same group that are redacting information. It's all one interconnected, narrative generating, censoring piece of machinery. What I've found difficult, and I bet you have too, is the hypocrisy in shifting goalposts, like, follow the science, peer reviews, experimentation, double-blind tests. All of these things are evidently applicable when questioning the mainstream narrative, but in support of the mainstream narrative, roll up, supports the mainstream narrative, stick it on the front of the New York Times. And the idea that the authors and the creators of this study have any affiliation at all with the NIAID and Dr. Anthony Fauci is ridiculous. That's exactly the kind of thing that has to stop if we're ever to have any trust in the institutions that have brought about so much cynicism, skepticism, and doubt. We know there's a war on now, that people have other priorities, but the fact is that our lives in the news cycle were dominated for 2 years. We've been through various phases where it was impossible to talk about natural immunity, vaccine hesitancy, conflicting opinions, the efficacy of masks, none of which I have an opinion on, because do you know what I would do? I'd wait for science. Proper science where people don't profit, proper science where people clearly don't have an agenda, proper science where a media is supportive of varying arguments so we, ordinary people, can make decisions about our own lives rather than continually managing the public sphere. So the public sphere is a kind of a boulder rolling through your consciousness, preventing cohesive thought, preventing you making informed decisions, the opposite of what it's supposed to be doing. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. Join the 5.1 million. We grow stronger. We grow stronger. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one or this one. Remember, I'm on tour. You can come see me in Bristol, Plymouth, Blackpool. I'm in Scarborough in like a week. You could be in the room with me. It's fantastic stuff. You'll love this show. If you want to sign up to my mailing list, do. And please, stay free.